Welcome everybody to another edition of the Orangebloods Modcast. We're doing it on YouTube today on the YouTube Orangebloods channel, in addition to the Yak. So if you're watching this on the video for the first time, give us a like for that. We are changing things up on the Modcast. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done that. It's me, it's Anwar, it's Alex making it's not his debut because we've had him do the scouting videos, but welcome back to the Orangebloods YouTube channel. Alex, there will be many more appearances to come. Gentlemen, I was thinking about like what we talk about today. There's the fallout in recruiting because after the mad dash of the last 5 weeks, it does feel like this week is a little bit of a breather. The coaches are on vacation. Like if nothing else, the Texas coaching staff is taking their break after what had to have been an exhausting month. You've got NIL. There's a lot of little things to talk about. I think I kind of want to start with NIL, Anwar. It is the 8th of July. So we're 8 days into this brave new world of college football. And there hasn't been a lot of movement on the Texas side of things. I've seen a couple of the female athletes. I've seen Lauren Hall sign a deal with Barstool. And I've seen one of the volleyball players sign a deal with one of the deodorant companies. I can't remember which one. But other than that, it's been pretty quiet. It has led Texas fans to think that the school isn't doing anything with NIL. And I just get a sense that in talking to people at Texas this week that there's a lot of stuff in the frying pan right now, and it's all being checked over by lawyers. And probably in the next week to 10 days, we'll start to see some of the things that I think Texas fans want to see. But there is a weird sense of panic that, like, the University of Miami announces that a UFC gym is sponsoring the entire team. So every guy on the team can get $6,000 if they wear a t-shirt every once in a while that promotes this MMA gym. And Texas fans want to know why they haven't had something like that announced. And why are they being left behind? And yet Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, they're all kind of in the same boat with Texas. Like, I feel like everybody should slow down and maybe watch this thing unfold a little more.
Well, I think Texas fans thought that this would give them the ultimate advantage, right, in recruiting because – it's Texas, right? So there's so many billionaires and millionaires around there that all of a sudden this is just going to be a slam dunk. And they are seeing other people. Like there was a guy from Oregon. I was trying to look it up while you're talking, but I thought the defensive lineman, he paired with Phil Knight on a deal. So, that's what Texas fans are expecting. Like, this is – everyone's going to get paid. It's going to make it rain for everyone. And all the billionaires and millionaires are going to go out and give them car dealership deals. And it's just going to make it rain. And you're not seeing it. It's a little bit of like a drizzle. And so I can see why they're like, wait a second, this is supposed to happen. So, like you said, we'll see what happens over the next week or two, but I can see why out the gate, there's a little surprise. You don't even hear like the players even teasing towards something big is about to come. And I think that's probably why it's a little bit of a surprise.
Alex, we went from a lot of people saying these guys shouldn't get paid to how come we haven't seen any of our guys get paid?
It's crazy, man. I think that one of the things, it's not just, I think this week is sort of kind of been a little bit weird with it because one, with the recruiting and the stuff, just the inexplicable fact that Cameron Williams and Kelvin Banks both go to Oregon, and you hear the reports from The Athletic and some of these other places that part of the pitch is something it's funny. You talked about this stuff being in the frying pan right now for Texas. Texas should have had this in the frying pan months ago, knowing that this was going to happen, like coming into this part of knowing that you had these visits coming up in June, knowing how important this was going to be, with these class of 2022 guys coming into this period where a lot of these guys want to commit before their senior season starts. You see that if you're a Texas fan, you see Spencer Rattler on Instagram saying that he's a Caniac ambassador now for Raising Canes. It's like a bunch of these other people. It's right off the bat. It's being used. It's being used by your biggest competitors. It's being used in two huge offensive line competitions that you had in recruiting. You start to wonder, why the hell do we not have anything going on here?
And here's the thing, Catch.
Go ahead.
Catch. The thing is, I think the piggyback off what Alex is saying, I think one of the biggest kind of misnomers that has happened when it comes to perception of Texas fans has been the leverage program. I think many people thought the leverage program was going to be like kind of like a marketing agency that they're responsible for getting guys sponsorships and you know all these kind of deals. But the leverage program, you know, we had this in the war room a couple of weeks ago. It's more of like a clearinghouse. It's more of just, you know, checking the paperwork and looking to see if the deals that the guys got on their own. Like what's supposed to happen is and people don't get it, but what's supposed to happen is this car dealership, Raising Cane's, all that stuff, they're supposed to contact the player directly. Directly go to the player. People are thinking that it's supposed to be leveraged. No, they go to the player, they get it directly, they work out a deal, and then they send over that paperwork to leverage. And then all leverage does is check with compliance and make sure like it's a P's and Q's, and then that's it. So I think the one of the things is that I think many people thought UT was going to actively go out and try to get guys deal, but that's not how it works. These guys have to get it on their own, and it's up to, you know, people who want to be a part of that for them to actually contact the athletes in order to make it happen.
Do these other schools, do you think these other schools have any, it feels like Oregon certainly has some kind of say in getting this Nike stuff going. And well, like, I'm wondering, admittedly, I don't know the rule as well as I probably should as far as NIL, but is the school technically allowed to broker these sort of things as if there was some sort of I guess middleman or agency, or is the leverage sort of program the only thing that you can do? Because it certainly feels like a school like Oregon right now is helping to broker these kinds of deals.
Alex, I'm going to have a lot of this in the war room tonight. So it was like a good set. It was a good set. You put a ball on a tee for me here.
Okay.
So the way this would have gone down, first of all, I don't mean to defend Texas, because I think one of the things that's definitely happened this week, Oklahoma made sure the Spencer Rattler thing got done. And I don't know that we've seen that on the Texas side, because the way this was supposed to work on July 1st, athletes could bring deals to the school. And then from what I was told from a member of Texas compliance this week was that the school then has 7 to 10 days. I think they've got a 10-day window. They then review the deal and make sure that everything's on the up and up. And I think legality is one of the big things they're focused on, that if it is upholds to Texas state law, then they're not going to get in the way of this thing going through. But I think they're very concerned about that. So the question would have been, which Texas players on July 1st would have, and in theory, like not in theory, in actuality, none of these guys were supposed to be contacted before July 1st. So it's kind of a wink thing when a guy has something teed up and ready to go on the first day, and the school has already vetted the contract in a way that they would announce it so soon. So one of the things I have heard that Bijan Robinson has some real, like, there aren't a lot of marketable players on this team right now that Old Spice would want to sign up to be, you know, I'm thinking of the contract that one of the female athletes at Texas signed, where she's Degree is who she signed with. There aren't a lot of Texas football athletes right now that I think would qualify for that type of deal. Bijan Robinson is one of those players. I have heard that he has some active pursuers on the NIL front. So it will be interesting to see when his first endorsement deal really gets announced. And it's one of the reasons why I'm waiting to see, even today, like now it's been a week. So the school has had time to review some of these deals. I think we'll start to get them announced, but the school can only approve deals. It can't, when we talked about the leverage program, Anwar, the limitations of it wasn't part of the conversation. Yeah. And from what I've been told this week, the school just can't they can define what's legal and not legal. They can't tell players that it's too little money, it's too much money, this is a deal that you should take, this is a deal that you shouldn't take. They have real limitations to just what their involvement can be. And I don't know that I fully understood that, Anwar, until now we're in it. And I'm hearing from people like, hey, FYI, if we could negotiate a deal with Covert Auto and Elgin, we would, or in anywhere, right?
Shame on you, Ketch. I had that in the war room a couple of weeks ago, outlining everything you just said.
Oh man,
you were moving. You were in the process of moving. So
and recruiting took it all out of us.
Okay, so you were in the process of moving. So I'm going to forgive you.
Please do.
Because you had to move from one city to another. And
Please do.
But I did have the entirety of it outlined of what leverage was about. And it was eye-opening to me, right? Because I literally thought they broker, right? And all it is they're just doing paperwork. And so Alex, what it almost has to end up being, if UT is going to be involved, it's almost going to have to be like NFL free agency, where, like at 4:01 p.m., they announce a deal. Like, how'd you get a 5-year deal done that quickly, right? It's got to be, it used to be at midnight, and at 12:01, someone announces it. It would have to be something that there was
legal tampering has to come to the NIL process.
Exactly. That's the way it would have to be. But for Texas, from a perception standpoint, I mean, they've got to start getting some deals in, because this will factor in to recruiting, Catch. But yes, leverage itself, they can't do anything. This is literally contact the players broker their own deal. To your point, everyone just wanted to go through the paperwork, make sure it's it. So that's why I started with the misnomer of what leverage was, as they started putting out tweets. And everyone's thinking like, oh shit, they make so much money. Texas does this, Texas does that. It was like, not really, guys. That's not what this program really does.
I think that, let's talk about what's happened in the first week of this. Spencer Rattler gets a deal. So Oklahoma gets some pub out of that, but I haven't heard of anybody else. I mean, really, nobody else on the OU team that I'm aware of has had a deal announced. So even if Bijan had announced his own Raising Cane's, or if, Covert Hutto had signed him to a car dealership deal. I wanted to get the Covert Hutto thing part, since for some reason I said Covert Elgin. Where the hell did that come from? There's so many Covert dealerships that you just, shame on me. But Oklahoma doesn't have that. We've heard about the Miami deal, and we've heard about the Oregon player, but haven't heard about a single player in the SEC that I'm aware of.
Well, we've heard about it. We've heard about a purported program within
Miami, correct?
Within Miami, of course, but also a little bit within Oregon about the stuff behind the scenes, where they're talking about how this is going to be OLU, and that the offensive line here, generally, it's only going to be skill position players. At other schools here, the offensive line are going to be the ones who get the Nike deals and stuff like that.
I think that's just Oregon recruiting really well. I think that's just them talking a great game. I think the Oregon coaches are overselling the Nike component.
That could be totally true.
But I don't think there's anybody to fact check them. So might as well say it until, maybe Kelvin Banks will never learn about that until after he signs. And then he's like, where's my Nike deal? It's like, well, it doesn't quite work that way. Right. But what hasn't happened is there hasn't been a Texas donor who is ready to align his business with the entire football team the way that we saw at Miami. And that I find a little bit interesting, because that in itself is less than a $600,000 investment for that particular business. And I'm just surprised that we haven't seen a business offer to do the same thing. And I'm surprised Texas hasn't reached out to somebody to say, hey, you've always wanted to pay players. Here you go. You know what I mean? You've been telling us for years that you want to be the bag man. So, hey, go be the bag man. Set up this deal where you can now pay players and each of our guys on the team can get $6,000 like the Miami guys. And all they got to do is rep your bank or whatever.
And you can actually write it off now as a legit business expense.
And then, hey, Ketch, as you're talking, there is, I sent you a couple of links on Slack. Maybe the last one I sent you is probably the best one. There's some people have been doing some NIL trackers out there. And so,
oh, that's cool.
And so, yeah, there are different ones that show you. So there are a couple of athletes from the University of Florida who have gotten deals as well. There have been guys, if we just Google NIL tracker, there's different websites that are actually keeping up with this stuff.
I see. And there are some guys, but again, it's not a huge list. You know, like I've seen an Alabama player, Evan Neal reached a deal with Yoke, a gaming app. Like these things are really scattered. The Miami thing is like the only real organized, the whole team gets a cut.
Yeah.
All these other dudes are like literally, and I'm on this link that you sent me. I mean, this is the full list of names that are listed. I think you've got a baseball player, Drew Gilbert at Tennessee. You've got Buddy Boeheim at Syracuse. I mean, hey, if you're the son of a coach, you're probably going to get paid. So you know. Evan Neal at Alabama, Spencer Rattler at Oklahoma, Dante Allen, a basketball player from Kentucky. So that makes sense. Will Ulmer from Marshall. He's a musician. So he's got live shows that he's doing. You've got Bo Nix, a quarterback out of Auburn, who's got an Ice-T deal. That's fantastic. But, you know, there's a couple of people from Fresno State, women's basketball players. I'm counting it. There's like four more football players. But that's it. That's not, you know, so.
Yeah, and then there's a link before that, and you know, apologies to Rivals if they have one, but 24/7 also has put out a link. And again, apology to Rivals, but they also named some of the football players who they've tracked and have some deals as well.
Yeah, and GoPuff is apparently, I'm seeing them on that particular link. They've done a bunch of stuff with a lot of guys, but at the end of the day, God, and I'm on that 24/7 link. There's not a ton of names. I mean, it's a smattering of, and they don't even have all the names that was on that other link that you sent me. Yeah. It's a smattering of names. I would dare say that if anything Texas hasn't done enough of, maybe it hasn't taught its players well enough how to hustle up their own deals. Because it really is, unless there's going to be a company that's very proactive and has a definitive, I want that guy, then I think that I think one of the more interesting NIL deals that I've seen this week was with Barstool. And it included a University of Texas athlete, Lauren Hall. And you're like, well, what's so interesting about her? You go to her TikTok page and she's got like 150,000 followers, maybe even more. Like Blake was telling me about this yesterday on our Slack channel that, you know, she probably leads now that Tara Davis is now no longer in the program, that she may have the single biggest. So she's got 400,000 followers on TikTok. So we've seen Barstool, a media company. I think they announced agreements with 14 different student athletes across the country. They've gone after the people, male or female, with the big social media presences, which is why you've seen Lauren get one as a University of Texas athlete on the female side of things. And you haven't seen a football player with that kind of, you know, notable. And the funny thing is we don't know what any of these guys are getting paid. So what does Barstool pay her? I mean, it could be,
I'll bet it's decent. I mean, Barstool's they're pretty good about pay.
You would think. I mean, and she's got value. Like, you know, you can put your social media following into this like calculator and it'll tell you how much your social media game is worth. So I'm guessing if you've got 400,000 TikTok followers, that it says your brand is worth a certain amount. So I'm sure she's doing fairly well, but It is interesting. I thought we would have seen more by now. And I don't know what more there is to say on the NIL thing at this point. Like I said, I'll have stuff in the war room. And if you're not on Orange Bloods, you've only been checking out the videos or the podcast or the modcast in this instance. Come on, hop on Orange Bloods. I will have more on this, on the NIL stuff tonight in the war room. But it's a wait and see game. And I think the first guy that I think we'll see Bijan. I don't know what I would wager, but having heard that Bijan definitely has some people knocking down his door, it would seem to be only a matter of time before at least he announces something. But I think we're waiting for the big shoe to drop, Alex. And until that happens, there's going to be some thirsty Texas fans that want to see that. I think Texas fans feel like this is a way to combat the cheating that they're convinced that they're not a part of, but everybody else is.
Right.
And they feel like this is our legal way to cheat. So a lot of these people have been waiting decades for Texas to kind of combat what they think takes place in the SEC and what does take place in the SEC, that Texas has always been hesitant to play kind of the dirty game, the seedy game, the living in the gray area game. This feels like a place to do that. And I think just Texas fans are frustrated that they didn't come out straight out the gate, flexing some muscle, having some deals approved, and taking advantage of a program that, Texas has spent more time promoting their leverage program than any other school in the country with their own NIL programs. And we haven't really seen the fruit of that take off.
I wonder, Catch, just before we get off NIL, because I sense you're kind of coming to the end of this, but just in your research, it's not just having to go out and get your deals like this, right? Your own sponsor deals. There's also stuff where, are these guys going to get payments from like NCAA football games from EA? Are they going to get payments on if their jerseys sell at the co-op and stuff like that? Or like,
I don't believe so. I don't know how that works, but the schools have gone out of their way to they don't have to give up anything.
Okay.
But these kids can hustle up any deal they want to, as long as it relates to state law. And I'll have more on this in the war room. What's really interesting is from state to state, the rules and laws are different. So for instance, you can't contact a high school prospect in the state of Texas and make an under the table agreement and say, hey, when you get to Texas, if you've committed on the moment you show up day one, we've got a deal we want to give you. That's actually against the law.
But it's not in other states.
It is not in other states.
Well, big money Texas A&M and Texas donors in the state legislature will change that real quick.
But we worry about when does this extend its way into recruiting, right? We've talked about Cameron Williams and his mention of Oregon and what they're doing with their offensive linemen and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. If I own a gas station, I can't go to Cameron Williams while he's in high school in the state of Texas and even talk to him about a deal. It's against the law. It's against UIL rules. And it's against the law, from what I was told by compliance. And they are, I think, going to be very aggressive in trying to find rule breakers in that area, because they don't want this thing to slip into a territory where they really can't control it. Right. But it's not like that in every state. In fact, I don't know the rules in Arizona, but if Bijan Robinson was a 5-star prospect this year coming out of the state of Arizona, depending on what Arizona state laws are, it could be completely different than what it is in the state of Texas. So none of these high school kids in the state of Texas can benefit from NIL right now. The UIL has said they can't. It's against the law in the state of Texas.
Oh, so it's not illegal to solicit them. It's illegal for them to be solicited.
No, I was told
you could
both.
Do it
okay. I was told both, but I was told that was a Texas state law thing, and that, I'm using Arizona and Bijan as an example because it's one that we can visualize, because that just happened. He just came a little over a year ago from Arizona. But if the laws in Arizona were different, it might put him into a position where, he could arrive at Texas with deals from the high school level. And again, it's a real big cluster. I think there's an anticipation that at some point there will be some universal across the map kind of rules that everyone will follow. But right now it's pretty state law, state rules kind of a thing. And Texas just has its head swimming with what they've got to do from Texas law and what they've got to follow. I don't even think they have their eye on the ball, like completely where, and what might be. And I don't for instance, I don't know what Oregon state law is. So could Oregon manipulate? Yeah, they could. They absolutely could. And honestly, UT could, if they figured out which states have very loose laws that would allow, the Red McCombs of the world to offer their car dealership to a 5-star prospect. It's a mess. It's a mess. It is not universal in terms of what each school has to do. And I'll have this in the war room tonight, but just a little bit of a tease. I had somebody inside the school say, when these coaches come back from their vacation this week, they are going to be in for a rude awakening. I also think there could be a number of deals that when the coaches get back and have a chance to be told, this is your NIL update, we're about to process all of this stuff. I think they've tried to let these coaches have some time off, but the rubber's going to meet the road real soon.
It sounds like the Wild West out there, man.
While you guys were doing that, I know people saw I was in my phone. The Big 12 announced who would attend media days next week, and the Texas representatives were Bijan Robinson and Keandre Coburn. Looks like there's only going to be 2 guys each school. And so so I was tweeting that out and putting that on Orangebloods as we spoke. I'll just tell you some of the other notable names from Oklahoma State will be Spencer Sanders, their quarterback. Skylar Thompson, quarterback out of K-State, will be there. Quarterback Max Duggan out of TCU will be there. Breece Hall from Iowa State will be there. Of course, DB Greg Ellsworth the second. I am sure Alex has already Alex has already been doing his NFL scouting on some of these guys. OU will not have Spencer Rattler. They will have Jeremiah Hall and Nick Bonito, the good linebacker out of
Interesting.
There. Yeah, interesting choice on that one. Baylor's got Connor Glavin and Terrell Bernard. Kansas
K-State's taking who is K-State taking?
Skylar Thompson, the quarterback, and DB Jerron McPherson.
I'm a little surprised that Deuce Vaughn's not going, because he is the most high-profile guy on Kansas State. He got snubbed yesterday by Bijan in the first team. And I was like, I'd like to hear Deuce Vaughn show up and but it won't happen. So damn it. I wanted to have him, and I wanted to have all the running backs there, and then Deuce Vaughn because he had a monster season. It felt harsh that he wasn't on the all Big 12 team yesterday. But look, we all understand why Bijan would be on it, but only 2 running backs. The Spencer Rattler thing when you told me the names, it just occurred to me that they can only take 2. And now with NIL, whereas before that was, I can remember like Texas players in the past feeling like Big 12 media day was a big pain in the ass because they had to leave 7-on-7 workouts. It interrupts at the very end of their off season before they take one final break to go, get ready for the season. It's an interruption. So if you take your quarterback, he can't work out with the rest of the team. If a lot of times you lose your leaders, and guys think of it as a big pain in the butt. But if I'm Deshaun Jameson, and it looks like every team's taking an offensive guy and a defensive guy, and I'm first team all Big 12 just released yesterday, and I don't have an NIL deal yet, I think I might want that platform to promote myself so I can get an NIL deal. There are weird little political things involved here. I wonder if Deshaun Jameson very quietly is like, oh man, they needed to take me. I needed to be the one to do that. I'm first team. You know what I mean? Like all these guys, I think now, because they're all trying to cut deals, they're all going to want any platform that they can get that they think might help them make some cash.
Yeah.
Texas is taking the two guys who I were my first guesses yesterday about being all Big 12 dudes. So at least Texas might be higher on them than the media or whoever else decided that team. Hey, Anwar, is it the media who decides that all Big 12 team this early on?
Yes, that's a media vote thing. Okay. Yeah, which we saw Texas only had two guys on that team, and everyone else like racked it up.
You keep saying only two. For me, two's pretty good. I don't know that they deserve more than two.
Only is
Coburn, maybe.
I mean, I'm saying, but it's still. I know people keep saying, "Why you keep saying only two?" Only two, well, because it's the University of Texas. Like that's where we're at. That shouldn't be the standard of where Iowa State has got like 8 guys in Texas, and you're supposed to be like, well, you got 2. Like that's nice.
Well, I think it plays into the. We've talked about. Look. They lose Osai, they lose Cosme, they lose Ellinger. Those guys all return. I mean, Ellinger's not beating out Rattler, but those other 2 guys are going to be first. You know what I mean? Like Joseph Osai and Sam Cosme are on that team if they come back. This was a team that a year ago didn't have a lot of difference makers. The true difference makers left, and Deshaun Jameson, I kind of put into that category, certainly as a return guy. I don't know that he's taken the step as a corner completely to be in the breadth of some of the guys that we've seen on that team. And that, quite frankly, are on the team this year. There's some good players in that all Big 12 secondary. Coburn's a guy that I could feel like absolutely could justify a place on that spot. But there's nobody on offense. I mean, and you could argue that Deuce Vaughn should be ahead of Bijan. But if not Bijan, I don't know who you're voting for at this point because nobody on the offense has taken a step where you would say they're one of the best players in the Big 12 at their position.
Well, what the media sometimes do catch is since they don't follow, since a lot of them, this is like some Kansas State writer, he doesn't follow the Texas offensive line. I think on Anwar, I don't vote on this stuff, but I think a lot of these media guys, whenever they look at it, they're like, well, this guy's been a 5-year starter. He started since he's a freshman. He should probably be on the first team. Like, so maybe if Kerstetter didn't get hurt last year, he would be a guy who would have been on there. But since he's coming off the injury, maybe not. I don't know. Anwar, is that true? I mean, if you're voting on offensive linemen, don't you just kind of look at who's been a starter for a long time and stuff like that? Or
usually,
yeah. But the problem with how the Big 12 does it, Alex, is that they send media members a blank piece of paper and say fill it out. So it becomes a real guesswork, subjective thing because. At that point, how do you figure out who's the best, right guard in here, or who's one of the top 5 offensive linemen? I mean, you go deep. You do a lot of research into offensive linemen, and I don't think anybody else in this conference who covers this, any team does as much as you. But I guarantee you, the majority of writers have no freaking clue who the top 5 offensive linemen really are, and it becomes like a little bit of a crapshoot. So I'm not a huge voting kind of person. I don't really I usually don't get into these things, to be honest with you. And there's an old newspaper thing about it because I think sometimes it's confirmation bias and it's too easy to vote.
Sometimes.
It is. It's too easy to vote on your own guys. And then if you don't vote on the team that you cover, then you become Kirk Bowles and everyone hates you forever.
That was Vince versus Reggie Bush. But.
Yeah, so that becomes a slippery slope. So usually I don't partake. If I do, I will reveal it and have some full transparency on it. But it literally, Alex, send you a blank piece of paper. They don't give you any nominations where you can at least say, okay, these are the guys who are being nominated, like at least like Pro Football Hall of Fame. Like I had a book of nominations. I can just go through and do the research. It's just literally like, who the hell do you want?
Yeah.
Let's talk about recruiting a little bit, guys. We're all taking a breather. And I mean, it's been a slow week. Texas last week, man, I wrote like 19 instant analysis pieces ready to go. And I ended up using 2. It was a lot of work while I was at the beach and you know what? You'll appreciate this, Alex. I felt like my Cameron Williams instant analysis article was the best instant analysis article I had ever written. And I used some of your analysis from early. It was going to be fantastic. And, nobody will ever, I almost posted it just to say, this is what you guys were going to read.
Yeah, you shouldn't have done that. I'm glad you didn't do that. That would have tilted
It was
people.
so good. I was
Would
so
have tilted
proud.
people endlessly. They would have said, so it was going to be this good, huh, Ketch?
I had what I thought was the perfect comparison between. I was really pleased with myself, and it didn't quite go down that way. And I guess I'll stick with you, Alex, in the sense that, you've paid a lot of attention to the offensive linemen in this year's recruiting class. So you were in on Cameron Williams before Texas was. You're a big fan of Robertson and Hudson. And what's funny is, I think when it comes to the strengths of both of those players, you and I are in complete agreement. I mean, I think I got real nerdy yesterday on our YouTube channel with Anwar when I was talking about Hudson and started to get really excited about his ability to be weirdly kind of an average athlete, but yet phenomenal in space. I was like, I don't know that I've ever seen a guy who doesn't move all that great and yet always finds a way to get on someone. And that is such a tough skill as an offensive lineman. Give me your breakdown. I mean, they didn't get Banks. They don't get Williams. You wrote this week, it makes Devin Campbell pretty clearly, if he wasn't the must guy before, he is the must guy now. What do you make of more than anything else, the offensive line developments of the last week are the thing that everybody's talking about?
Well, I mean, look, I think that Robertson, for me, and Hudson all along have been players that needed to be part of this class. If you're going to take 5, you want those 2 guys, because that probably Cam Dewberry at this point, leaning Ohio State. You didn't know what was going to happen with Kelvin Banks. Devin Campbell, we know, like I talked about in the column, that's just, that's right now, that should be the number 1 priority of the staff, because if you're taking 5, you have these 2 guys in Hudson and Robertson, who I said they're good players on their own. They're good players. I like what you said about Hudson, the way that he can operate at the second level. I was a little bit late for the Zoom meeting because I just downloaded yesterday and have been watching Coach Flood's Inside Zone clinic. And I'm thinking about writing, I've been trying to write an article of it. As I'm writing it, I'm realizing it might be too dry. After we do our chat today, I'll figure out whether I'm going to stick with this or whether I'm going to maybe try to write because I need to get something else up soon. I don't know if people are going to like this, but it's really interesting to watch, and you get to see just how much Coach Flood talks about targeting, finish, and follow through at the second level. It's such a big part of what he teaches as part of his inside zone scheme. And that's something that he looked at with Cole Hudson. The way that he strikes from low to high, the way that he, the way that he gets his legs outside of his target, he keeps his arms and hands inside. He's just really, really athletic, balanced, and functional in open space, which is something you don't generally see from a kid that's up there close to 300 pounds. And then Robertson, I'd always talked about how I thought that he was underrated. I think that there's a lot to like about him. There's a lot of his skill set that I looked at it and I said, a lot of this reminds me of Kelvin Banks. He doesn't remind me as much of Dewberry or as much of Campbell, but the way that he moves, I thought that he and Kelvin Banks should maybe be a little bit closer in the rankings. Granted, I have Kelvin Banks ranked a little bit below where I would have Devon Campbell and Cam Dewberry ranked, which is different from rivals that has Kelvin Banks ranked above both of those guys. Regardless, I think.
Do you think Robertson can play tackle? Because I don't.
Maybe. I kind of, he's, as much as I should have the opportunity to see him. I mean, he's just at Westlake. I still haven't seen him live with my own 2 eyes yet. But I think that based on his film, I kind of think so. But I'd kind of like to see him in a live setting first. I think he could play right tackle though, man.
Because if he could, his value goes up exponentially for me. I mean, the moment you tell me, if Kyle Flood tells me I've seen that kid in person, and trust me, he's a tackle in this class, and he can start at right tackle for us, and that's what we're planning on. I would take a real. He looks like a really good interior guy. As much as we talk about Hudson and what he does in space, it's hard not to watch Robertson and drool at times over his physicality. I mean, he puts it on dudes.
Yeah. Excellent motor, excellent angles, and just, basically the best pure finisher in this. I mean, of the guys that I've watched on film outside of Campbell. But look, I think what should have happened with this class optimally would be, all right, you get Hudson, you get Robertson. So, I mean, they're key pieces anyway, but you would get them to hopefully buttress a group that would have gotten, you know, Devon Campbell, maybe Kelvin Banks and Cameron Williams. To me, that five would have been just bananas, bonanza, bonkers, whatever B word I guess you want to use. Now, you know, the centerpiece in the bell cow has got to be Devon Campbell. I don't think that anybody can really count on Texas coming in and having some sort of college football playoff run this year and getting to flip Kelvin Banks or getting to flip Cameron Williams. You know, I mean, something like that, I guess, could happen. It doesn't seem likely to me. I honestly think that you might be more likely, if you had a big season like that, to maybe bring Cam Dewberry into the fold with some kind of big announcement that he would make with Devon Campbell as some surprise. I think there's a better chance of that happening than there's of flipping either of those two guys back. And I don't think that there's a good chance of the Cam Dewberry deal happening. So you have Devon Campbell, you have these two guys. Now, how do you fill the rest? I mean, I talked about it earlier in the, you know, maybe a Texas guy like a Jalen Early. You know, Texas could maybe get in on him. I know that he's been, you know, he's gotten a bunch of future cast to FSU, and there's been a bunch of talks there with Florida State. But you know, based on talking with Jalen, I've talked to him before. I know that he trains with Coach D-Hawk. You know, he's into Texas. So I think that they could get back on board with that guy. And then one of these out-of-state guys, the Malik Agbo that was out there training with Malik Murphy. Is there somebody out there that he sort of knows about? Is there a 4-star dude? There's the Ernest Green kid. So whenever you look at all these guys, you say, okay, you have Robertson, you have Hudson. We know we need 5. So Devon Campbell, you just got to chalk it up. I mean, Jeff Banks needs to keep calling him every single day, the way that he's been doing since spring. He's been calling him every day, saying you're our number one priority. He needs to keep doing that. And then 2 more pieces need to fall into place with some of these other guys. It's not going to be a Kelvin Banks and a Cameron Williams sort of duo there. This sort of, you know, as I described in my column, sort of the best actor in a supporting role, but behind the lead actor, which would be Devon Campbell. But I do think you could get a class where Texas would say, damn, you know, that is a good class. And a big reason for it is because Cole Hudson and Connor Robertson are good prospects that are going to form a good base for this class. You need to get that bell cow. Yeah, I think you need to get that bell cow. You need to fill out with a little bit more volume here on the sides to make it a well-rounded group.
Anwar, I'm working on 2023. I'm working on my 2023 LSR right now. There's a good chance that by the time people watch this video, it will have already been out. And it's a bad year for offensive linemen. It's bad. Like, and
this year was so good.
Last year, like the last 2 years have been historically good. I think we've taken for granted like these offensive linemen as big time prospects that kind of grow on trees. Last year, and you know, because we always kind of laugh and joke at each other when we start to say next year, right? It's like, we'll kick the oh, well, you didn't do it this year, but if you do it next year, you've got a chance to save everything. It's not true next year. Next year, if Texas wants to sign an elite offensive lineman, they may, and look, I would imagine before it's all said and done, somebody will emerge. But as things currently stand, I'm looking at a very rough draft of my rankings, and the first offensive lineman comes in at 17 in the state. So no top 10 guys yet. This is the class they need to do it in. And I think where Alex is 100% right is if you are Kyle Flood and these Texas coaches and you thought that you were going to get Kelvin Banks and you thought at worst you had a really good shot at Cameron Williams, then you have to keep going. They have to recruit those guys even harder than they've. The good news about both of those guys picking Oregon, you can flip a dude from Oregon. He's thousands of miles away. It's not Alabama. It's not Ohio State. If they slip a little bit on the field, if somebody's great, I wouldn't be surprised if both of those guys flip before it's all said and done It's a long way till December. You have got to keep going because you can't say, well, we'll just get them next year. It's not the same thing. And I think, the real quality is available right now. And next year it gets real hard, I think.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy to flip a guy from Oregon. I think, back in the day where you can say PJ Locke was a guy that grew up wanting to be a Texas fan. He was committed to Oregon. And then Charlie Strong comes in at the midnight hour and gets him to flip because he still had Texas posters in his room. I mean, that's one thing. But I think we're far removed from that. And I think that, first of all, we're talking about Oregon. These guys are committing right around time that Oregon players are striking really badass deals. Mario Cristobal, a guy that we talked about before in a previous video, but he signed an extension. And so he's going to be a guy that's going to be around for a long period of time. So, I don't think that it's going to be as easy as they could just flip it and turn it on, and just especially with this whole NIL era at this moment. So I still think to your point, yeah, I mean, you still make the phone calls, you still, try to flip guys. But I think to Alex's point, the guys who are available, the guys that you have an opportunity to get who have not made decisions, that's your day and night. I mean, that's day and night jobs. That's who you're sending funny videos to. You're sending memes to. Like you're trying to connect with this person on any single level possible. Because to your point, because from a future recruiting standpoint, there's a couple of things. Texas after this season will lose a couple of their super seniors. Whether it's, the Kirk Stetters or Okafor, who, they've got their 6 year of eligibility. So they're able to play now, and Tope Amade. And then if you don't hit it in this recruiting class, I mean, Alex can talk about what it looks like next year when the super seniors are gone. But now you start really playing from behind, and now you got to start thinking about transfer portals and all those other type of things if you can't nail some of the top elite guys. Because I imagine next year when the super seniors are going, I imagine it's just a lot of coin flicks once you get past like a Christian Jones. So I'm with Alex all the way on this one.
Is there anything else before we kind of move on to parting shots? I was about to go, Anwar, parting shot, go. I think I did that to you last week.
I got a parting shot. I'm going to try to make sure it doesn't get too off the rails.
Okay. Well, does anybody else have anything about recruiting that they want to get into? I mean, I feel like a lot of it would be repetitive. The real things that have occurred in the last week were offensive line related. I think we've discussed those. It'll be, I think it's the exact same conversation for the next couple of weeks until Bryce Anderson decides what it is that he wants to do. And then we will talk about, okay, this is how important he is. And what it would mean if Texas either gets him or does. If they don't get Bryce Anderson, then I think they potentially have to worry about, one of the lures of Texas is that he's got a cousin on the roster. There are guys from that area.
Who's his cousin?
Oh God, you just asked me, and I just.
No, I'm sorry. I had no idea.
If I looked at the roster, I'll look it up. But I think Jalen Gilbo's a guy that wants to play with Bryce Anderson, and I think and it might be that Gilbo is his cousin. Maybe I've got it all backwards. I've got too much information in my head, and it's just all scrambled. But I mean, I think that Anderson becomes because if you don't get Anderson, then you went the summer without getting a difference maker, and how that then it really makes what you do in the fall really important. And it does then really start to make me worry about the remaining really true difference makers that are on there if Texas can't start to get this thing rolling a little bit. Alex, did you know that the highest ranked in-state player, Anwar knows this because I told him yesterday, the highest ranked in-state player on the Rivals top 100 that Texas has committed to them right now is Gilbo at 24. They don't have a single top 20 kid in the state of Texas committed to them right now. And there aren't a lot of schools that have a bunch, but Texas doesn't have any yet. And some of that has to do, look, Jaden Blue does the I'm not playing as a senior bit, and Rivals significantly punished him for that. But even if we were to say Blue's a top 20 guy, it's not the strength in numbers that you would want to use to convince a guy to come to come join the party. And at some point, Texas got to start getting some guys that join the party so that when they get to Devin Campbell, they can say, look, you're not coming alone. Look at all these other badass players we have. I think, you know, I don't know. So anything else about recruiting that anybody wants to say before we go into parting shots?
Nah,
going once, going twice. Sold. Anwar, let's hear that parting shot. Take us off the rails. It's okay.
Well, I don't want to go into the defund the police conversation.
Oh, you're going to talk about your car getting fair enough. Fair enough.
But I did not expect so what happened was, I had a friend, you know, someone come in from out of town, and you know, first time to Austin, you know, you take them to all the traditional spots so you can go take some pictures. So I did like the duck tour, you know, that day, took them to like that 360 outlook, you know. Oh, it was really cool, man. Did the duck tour, going to Lake Austin and stuff.
And did you guys quack the little ducks whenever you drove by Citizens?
Yeah, no, you have a little.
Oh, okay, so I'm not sure.
You've just taken us off the rails.
Yeah. So the fun stuff, right? Shout out to the duck tours of Austin. It's really cool. If you got someone coming in from out of town, it's a really fun experience, right? So anyway, I'm like, go up to the 360 bridge. Like that's an Austin thing, right? Go through the 360 bridge, take a picture. Went to 360 bridge, was back within 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes, my back car window was smashed in, right? And then the front car with the passenger side was smashed as also, right? But the back was smashed in, all right? I'm not expecting APD to do an active investigation or anything like that. All I want to do is just file a police report for my insurance stuff. And I had a gun stolen out of there. And I just was like, all right, if this thing is used in a crime, I just don't want anyone coming to my house asking those kind of questions. So I'm like, let me do that. And so with APD, you can't actually call APD. You have to actually call 311. All right, fine, call 311. Try to tell them everything that happened. Not a problem. We'll have someone get back to you within 24 to 48 hours. Okay. Then call back. I was like, hey, realized my gun was stolen. Does that expedite it at all? They're like, no, it doesn't. A stolen gun doesn't really expedite anything. I'm like, oh, okay.
I bet if someone gets shot with that gun, it gets expedited.
Oh, it gets expedited. And then come to me looking for it, right?
Yeah, you're like, I've been trying to have you guys come out. I promise.
Finally, you made it.
Yeah. Wait. No. Really? Oh, wait, like this? Interlock. Okay. My bad. So that's what happens, right? So then 3 days pass. I don't hear back from them. So I call back, and they're like, you're in queue. We just don't know where we're going to get you. So I decided just to do like a little appeal on Twitter and like, hey, I am trying to file a police report. What do I need to do? And it so went off the rails because then it went into a defund the police conversation, which I totally did not see coming. All I was trying to do was trying to get my police report filed. So I understand. So it took about 5 days for me to finally file a police report. Finally was able to get a return phone call 5 days later. So I understand. Look, I don't know all the particulars of everything. And I respect our law enforcement, the hard jobs that they have. And it's the paperwork stuff. Something's got to change, though. I would just have to say in my parting shot, like, at some point, I don't want to get into county commissioners, Adler, city of Austin going downhill, homeless population, all these other type of things. But I do think that if your gun is stolen in the city of Austin, it shouldn't take 5 days to make a report. So my parting shot is city of Austin PD, please consider expediting phone calls to have a report when a gun is stolen. And you can get into like, should I have had it? Okay, it's my right to have it. But 5 days, it should something like that. I think someone's got to say, you know what, we should do better.
Fair enough.
That's all.
Oh, I just so you know, like a couple of years ago, I had my Benz get hit by someone without insurance, and I called the police and I was like, hey man, my car's messed up. This person doesn't have any insurance. I could really use somebody to come litigate this because I'm afraid I'm going to get screwed. And they lectured me for calling 911. They were like, sir, this is an emergency line. You need to call like some other 811 or 7, whatever the other number is.
311 in Austin. 311 in Austin.
No, they were mad at me. I was like, I need to report an accident. They're like, is anybody dead? I'm like, no. I mean, like my car is on life support. Oh, well, you just exchange information. And I was like, that's the thing. I don't know that this person has they don't speak English. There's no insurance. There's no information to share at this point. And they just wouldn't say. So my faith in the APD dropped significantly the day my car was in the middle of the road. And they're
so how'd you get it out? What did you do?
I had to start it and move it. It was over off of, if you're going down Anderson Lane and you're by where Lamar and all that little traffic is at, and cars are crossing over and they're waiting at stop signs, I had turned off of 183 onto Lamar and I got broadsided. And once the police said they weren't going to come out, I just drove my car over to into an Enterprise parking lot or something like that. But yeah, no, it wasn't in the end, the guy had insurance, thankfully. He just didn't have it on him. But I was able to get a license plate and that worked well enough. Anyway, Alex, you got a parting shot?
Yeah. I think if any of that stuff, like I told you guys in Slack, man, any of that stuff happens out here in Lakewood,
Cedar Park.
Yeah. Cedar Park. They send the SWAT team, the K9 units. They have
they've been waiting all day for something to do.
A robotic specialist comes, takes the DNA samples from the window. I don't know. I don't have much to. I can't follow Anwar's parting shot. I guess I'll just say, I just got home from my vacation. I went down to Mexico, Cancun. It was a great time, and all-inclusive resort. I'm not sure how much there are some people that take much better advantage of all-inclusive than I do, because I can't drink during the day really, or else it makes me so useless by 5:00 in the afternoon. And I feel like it just ruins my whole evening if I've been out there getting sun drunk all day. But Jesus Christ, man, that's not the average person on an all-inclusive trip. They're taking advantage, man, big time. From breakfast, I mean, mimosas, Bloody Marys, go out to the pool. It's pina coladas, it's margaritas. I mean, and they're just ordering up, item after item from food and stuff like that. I'm asking for bottled waters, I'm doing stuff like this. So I didn't quite get to take the full advantage like that, but certainly when it came to nighttime, that was whenever we could go all out. I really, really enjoyed it down there. A beautiful trip with the family. The thing that sucked, that was worst, was this whole airline Armageddon that occurred over the last weekend where man, we got packed up. And what's crazy is about for international travel right now, you still have to do this COVID testing, right? And it has to be done within, I think, 48 hours, a 48-hour window of the time that you leave when you're coming back into the USA internationally. And so we had gotten our COVID test. They had a place at the resort set up. We get to the airport. We're getting close to that 48-hour window. The flight gets canceled and pushed till the next day. They put us up in this crappy hotel that's right there by the airport. And everybody's like, hey, man, why do you care? It's an extra night in Cancun, right? I'm just like, what shit, man. It's an extra night in Cancun, but my bags are all packed. It's a shitty hotel. I have a view of the airport. The beach is nowhere in sight. I have 2 kids that need car seats to go anywhere. I can't call up a Mexican cab and ask them to bring car seats where I can take the kids, even to a nice restaurant. We're stuck here in the hotel. The hotel's out of food because all the flights got canceled. They're not expecting all of this, and they don't have enough food to give everybody. So my picky ass kids, with the way that they eat, they're not eating this thing. They had fettuccine Alfredo, they're in a Mexican airport hotel. They're not going to eat it, so I got cranky kids who aren't eating. They're stuck at this place, all this. And I get to wondering, why is this all happening? And what's happening? It's good to see on one level. It's bad to see on another level. What's good, and I have a feeling things are about to change, because dude, here's the thing. Things are back to normal, man. The animals are back out in the wild. Things are back. The airports are packed. You know what I'm saying? The animals are back out in the wild. I think that maybe with these airlines, with the staff, what they did was they had to lay off so many people at the beginning of the pandemic. I think bringing them back on now to meet demand that they're seeing right now, they have these protocols that they have to go through, right? The safety, they can't just bring them back in. They have to go through 2-3 weeks of these safety courses to make sure they're up to date and yada, yada, yada. So I think it's going to get back to normal, maybe by the end of July. But I'll just say right now, for my parting shot, if you're flying out anywhere right now and you're going on travel vacation, I would just say you should not to plan on getting delays or plan on cancellations, but just realize that could be a real part of the equation. I think it's getting better, but it was certainly something that whenever I was just getting back just this past weekend impacted us and impacted so many other travelers.
Sounds like you're yelling fire in a crowded theater. I'm just kidding.
I'm just saying, I'm trying to give the people tips. I'm trying to give them good, hot travel tips.
Did you get back the following day?
I was flying back the following day, but I didn't get back until early morning of the day after. So I was supposed to fly out on Thursday. I got home very early on Saturday morning.
Interesting. It's not fun. No. Just FYI, anybody that is wondering, he didn't have fun with that. He complained about it quite a bit.
I had to tell somebody.
No, we're here for you.
Me, of course. Yeah.
We're here for you. We'll always be here for you, but you were not happy. And I'm glad that you had that outlet because there was quite I wish I'd been able to play cards with you then and there. That would have been fantastic.
It would have been real easy to get me on tilt.
My parting shot, guys, just so you know, we're about a month away. Like, hang in there. I know that we are now in the hardest part of the dead season. I mean, I don't know what Alex is doing for his gambling vices. Like, is it just baseball all the time? Because the DFS baseball, I've transitioned out of it. I've basically just yeah, man. I've been running simulations using the cheat sheet for just these fantasy drafts. I've been doing hundreds of simulations a day, and that kind of takes up the itch I have, man. I'm just getting super hyped for fantasy season. Anwar, how's that make you feel?
About Alex and fantasy?
He's doing hundreds of simulations because I haven't started yet.
It's that time of year. I mean, I guess, because training camp is right around the corner. NFL training camp's around the corner. That's when you start paying attention. So I thank you for the wake-up call, Alex. And yes. now Ketch and I know that we are far behind.
Yes.
And it is, I'm not going to do hundreds. But I have taken the philosophy. I try to do the opposite, like in Seinfeld, to do the Bizarro World thing, or the opposite. And so I try to think the less preparation I do, maybe that will help me be successful. That shit ain't working. I got to go back to the roots of
you did that. Like, I did it a couple of years ago and I finished second, and I was like, oh, I need to do that more often. And then I did it last year and it wasn't my favorite year. And so now I'm feeling like I need to try to match Alex as much as possible.
Yeah. You know? It's as much, but the good part is, no matter what, and this is, I'll say this is my second part of shot. No matter what, Alex, you guys have to be fully transparent when you write all of your stuff on your website. So I can just read your website and get all the information that I need and know exactly what you're thinking about.
That's 100%
true. It is true. It is the great swindle against Alex is that, he's got to put out, and we know where he's coming from because he can't lie on Roster Watch just to win the league with us.
Oh God. So, you have no idea how bad I want to.
So when Roster Watch puts out the,
I'm sorry. Whenever we do waiver pickups, like once the waivers open during the week, like I literally like the one thing that I will do in that league that's a little bit bad is before I'll tweet out the news that, like if I hear a bit of news and I know that it means to go pick somebody else up, before I make the tweet out to all of our followers to tell them that, like, I'll go do it in our league first because I don't want any of you guys just to see that tweet and then
that's fair.
Swindle me.
Your comrades put out stuff on, like, I think Tuesday or something like that, and waiver wire pickups, and our waiver wire stuff happens on Wednesday. So it's if you want to cheat, we just see what you guys write, and then we know exactly what you're thinking.
We're never surprised.
Never.
Well, never surprised. It's like, oh, okay. If I'm gonna get him, I better put some urgency behind it. Yeah. It's nice to know though that there is an occasion where you'll try to not be transparent and swindle us it's completely fair. I think you at least should have that little moment every week where your plans are completely put out on a plate for us to scoop up and enjoy. Look, we've enjoyed it. It's been, for the three of us, that was a much more enjoyable podcast. Like, maybe we should kick Sukumel out more often. Maybe Dustin McComas was dragging us down. Like, I really enjoyed Anwar, Alex, and myself having a little modcast action debuting on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Hit the like if you've made it this far and you haven't hit the like button, and you listen to Anwar's rant about his car being broken into and Alex's rant about, you know, travel and be careful if you're going to Mexico or anything like that. And then if you heard me talk about whatever it is that I just talked about, and you're still with us, you better like us. You better hit the like button, and you better be a subscriber, because you've hung in for an hour, and who does that? So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll do it again next week. Until then, you guys take care of each other. Later.